And back to reality. The checkpoints is slowly drawing to an end. We'll be leaving off with the teaser of Forbes Woman, where you can read a lot of interesting things and meet new women who are doing business and doing it fantastically, doing it very well.
But before that, Georgi, let me present one of the leading women in this new issue of Forbes Woman, and that's Katarina Bjorlin Hansen from EBRD. For this new issue, we sat down in this office to talk about the direction that EBRD will be focusing on its efforts in coming years, and the pandemic being definitely one trigger, but not the only one, since inclusion is at the core of EBRD's values. Let's start with EBRD, and what does EBRD's year look like to you?
This year was a very unusual year. We came into it quite strongly with a lot of projects in our pipeline, and we were very excited about the prospect. And then we were all hit by COVID-19, and it's been an exceptional ride for all of us. We all had to get used to working from home in periods. We all had to get used to using new digital technology to be able to operate. But we came out of it very, very strongly. We have had a record year. Last year our volume was about 300 million. This year it exceeds 600 million, which shows that we could really step up and support Georgia in the areas of the economy where it really needed support to survive this very difficult time in our life.
Now comes this focus from EBRD. It's all about inclusion, equality. Is there any impact of COVID-19?
When development happens, we can't leave certain people behind. So we need to have inclusive development to make sure that all groups in society get the chance to explore their full potential and develop their full potential. And also to make sure that everyone can contribute in full to Georgia's development going forward. In regards to COVID, this has of course had an impact as well. Maybe for youth, first those who are still in school, they have probably experienced a great leap in digital technology. So Georgia has taken a large step forward in terms of having digitalized economy in terms of the education sector. But also the youth that recently graduated, they are, of course for them it's very, very difficult to find jobs now when the economy is contracting due to COVID. For women, it's maybe more difficult because if you're working from home and trying to take care of kids, then of course it may not be so easy to work. And finally, for region, if you look at regional inclusion, the digitalization and the way we work now during COVID may actually be of benefit, because now suddenly it doesn't really matter where you work. So I would say there are both positives and negatives with this.
How does this encouraging of inclusion help and address business needs of the clients of EBRD?
We work with inclusion not only to address the business needs of our own clients, but we do it for the economy as a whole. First, if you give everyone the potential to develop and to have to access to economic inclusion, that is, take part of the formal economy, first you grow the domestic market. You can probably grow the domestic market by about 50%, because if you include all women, all the regions and all youth, of course the market, domestic market will grow. Also for employers looking for staff, if you have a wider selection, it's very possible that you will find better people that you would otherwise, or people with other skills that you didn't think that you needed. So as a general rule, access for all is beneficial for the entire society.
So what has EBRD identified as main barriers for this inclusion, and what are some of the tools that EBRD is using to kind of meet these needs?
Very often we speak about financial inclusion, and here knowledge about access to finance is a barrier that we are actively trying to address together with local banks, together with SMEs, with small companies, through outreach, through seminars. We try to explain how to access finance to grow your business. Very often there has, in the past at least, been a bit of a preconception that men are more creditworthy than women. Actually, statistically, it's exactly the opposite, because women are typically better at repaying loans. But there is an awareness that needs to happen that women are at least as creditworthy as men when they do, and this is particularly important for small companies and startups, because you don't have a history that you can show how well you have served your loans. So we also work with youth to make sure that the skills they get are good for the labor market. For example, right now we look at the nursing curriculum. Nurses are now in very high demand. And when you look at nursing, it's traditionally a job for women. We actively try to attract men to train to become nurses, to make it a more balanced sector between men and women. And we have also made sure that we include in the nursing curriculum more up-to-date knowledge than you used to have before. In regional development, it's very important also to reach out not only to small companies and large companies in Tbilisi and the other big cities, but also actively look in the regions. The reason regional inclusion is so important is, first, if youth grow up in regions where they feel that there is no future for them, they will come to the big cities, and the big cities are going to be overwhelmed with unemployed people. So it's important that people feel that it's a future if you grow up, regardless of where you grow up in the country.
Are you working not only with private sector but with the state, so that what you are doing with the private sector is actually sustainable in the long term?
We do work with the state. The example I used before with the nursing curriculum, of course, that is with the Ministry of Education. So that's, that the state takes an active role. And also the Ministry of Health, of course. But also, when we do projects with the state, when we do our sovereign projects, for example, public transport projects, the state is our client and our counterpart. And we incorporate inclusion, often gender inclusion, in the projects that we do. And if I may use an example, it's, for example, public transport. Public transport is exceptionally important for women because women have less access to a car of their own than men traditionally. So women usually rely on public transport to a greater degree. It's also very important that, for example, bus stops are well lit so women feel safe when they're waiting for the bus. So there isn't the public transport angle that prevents people from going out, or, for example, going to a job where you end up staying late, for example, because you're busy. So it's very, very important for the economy, for the labor market, that public transport functions for everybody. Here also the inclusion aspects can also be, for example, low floor buses, so you can for easier access for people with walking impediments, for example. So that's another inclusion angle that we try to make sure that the public transport works for everybody. And here, of course, it is the state that we work with. It's the state that eventually need to approve our proposed inclusion elements.
Are you trying to respond to the demand, so to say, or are you kind of like creating this demand?
We're trying to push it a bit, and any project that we do has a reform component of some kind, and very often we look at what we call inclusion to see, when we do this project, how can we include a group of people who weren't included in this economic activity before. So another example is in the agriculture sector, where we worked with a company called Katarina, that is a broiler, producer. Yeah. They agreed to train 100 grain farmers to make sure that they could get the grain they need for their chicken. Yeah. This isn't a natural thing for a private company to do, but through joint cooperation and through our dialogue, we all agreed that this is a very good thing to do, not only for the company itself, but for the greater sector development.
Another is EVEX Medical Corporation.
Yes. We have a long-standing cooperation with EVEX, and there we agreed on a reform objective together that would actually target the sector rather than the company itself. The company works really well, our financing goes to their internal needs, but we agreed with them that we need to further develop the nursing curriculum. And here again, first, the nursing curriculum, the nurses, when they train to become nurses, they need to get the knowledge that they need today, including the technology that is used today. So the nursing curriculum needed to be upgraded to become more modern, really. And again, here we introduced the idea of trying to attract young men to train to become nurses as well. So this we do together with EVEX and with the Minister of Health, with the Minister of Education, and with other clinics similar to EVEX as well.
Do you think this needs to be, this inclusion needs to be some kind of like, I don't know, like self-regulation, or are you for like mandatory measures like quotas, for example?
Quotas is a very difficult question. There are pluses and there are minuses. If I would think of myself, if I would get a job because I was quoted in as a woman, I probably wouldn't be very proud of it. Mm-hmm. But if the quota actually got me to the interview and then I got the job on my own merits, I would be fine with it. So there are both pluses and minuses. It's difficult. In EBRD, we usually say that as long as we take the best candidate available, we will end up with 50-50 men and women. And it actually seems to be working quite well because it's very even. So I come from a very long tradition of gender balance. So for me, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to imagine how you would regulate the private sector to make sure that this happens. I think awareness is much more important, and it will probably yield better results. Mm-hmm. And I'm absolutely sure that if anyone hiring would have a very open mind when they do their shortlist for a certain position and interviewed people from different areas, maybe people they haven't met before, maybe people with a different background or a different experience that they didn't think about before. Maybe it's a bit more work in the recruitment process, but I think the end result is going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be very rewarding.
My last question, just to sum up everything, how are you evaluating EBRD's work in Georgia, and how you evaluate Georgia after EBRD's efforts here?
Georgia is one of our longest standing clients. It's a founding member. We've been here since '92, I believe. And we have a strong tradition of working very closely with the private sector, which is our main counterpart. We do selected work with the state as well. But the work we do with the state is targeted at facilitating for the private sector in the end, to make sure that there is electricity, there are roads, there is water, and so forth. So EBRD's work in Georgia covers just about any sector in the economy, and we are open for any new ideas, any new suggestions would be highly welcomed. It's been a pleasure to see over the years Georgia's tourism sector develop so well. It's really impressive if you compare to a number of years ago. And also the awareness of Georgia as a tourism destination abroad. This is an example of how well Georgia actually can develop. Other areas now where I understand Georgia is attracting film crews, I think it's an excellent idea because it's such a beautiful country. And all these sort of small niches or new niches where Georgia puts its mind to developing, I think this is really, really good, and we are happy to support.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking our questions.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hey guys, stay tuned, subscribe and follow us on BMG.